Good Father Hien.
Okay, well, you got some time to drink because I'm a little long-winded here. And like the fellow said about memory, I got my memory shot. First, let me say that I'm honored to be asked to speak tonight to Hien and Frank's wedding celebration. However, compared to my parents, Pete and Betty, sitting with us tonight, who were married on February 16, 1952, over 71 years ago, how unqualified I feel to speak. Let me tell you a little bit about my parents. They got married young, and while young, raised 3 boys. However, in my entire life, I can't remember ever seeing them argue in public. Sure, they disagree on things, but I never saw that bitter bickering between spouses that I personally find so troubling. However, one thing I did observe is that my parents always seemed to have their first priority their children, and now their grandchildren and great-grandchildren. So it's with great humility I read from the New Testament of the Bible this passage on love. There are many stories in the Bible that stretch our faith, but the following is part of the wisdom that's found in the Bible from Paul's letter to the Corinthians, chapter 13. If I speak in the tongues of men and angels, but have not love, I'm a noisy gong and a clanging cymbal. And if I have prophetic powers and understand all the mysteries and all the knowledge, and if I have all faith so as to remove mountains but not have love, I have nothing. If I give away all I have, and if I deliver my body to be burned but have not love, I gain nothing. Love is patient and kind, but love does not envy or boast. It is not arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoices with truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, and endures all things. Love never ends. As for prophecies, they will pass away. As for tongues, they will cease. As for knowledge, it will pass away. For we know in part, and we prophesy in part, but when the perfect comes, the partial will pass away. When I was a child, I spoke like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. When I became a man, I gave up childish ways. For now we see in a mirror dimly, but then face to face. Now I know in part that I shall know fully, even as I've been known fully. So now hope, faith, and love abide, these 3, but the greatest of these is love. There's a cycle of life, and we see it all around us. I had the pleasure of backfilling for Ross while he was in Djibouti in December while Ellen was out flying. Let me say it's quite a challenge for an 65-year-old grandpa to try to manage 3 young kids. Caleb would only wear shorts to school, even when it was below freezing. Callie had trouble going to bed and getting up dressed in the morning. Cody, who was mobile and a little noisy there, but couldn't get up and downstairs by himself, so he had to be constantly watched. And if he ever got into the pantry, you had to ransom him out with a small packet of food. We all start out as infants, totally dependent on adults for our care and feeding. As a child or young adult, we can take care of ourselves in limited situations, but often don't have judgment to avoid dangerous situation and therefore require consistent supervision. As adults, we can pretty much take care of ourselves, hold down a job, and pay the bills. As parents, we are not only responsible for ourselves, but for our children as well. Today, Hien and Grant are taking another step in their lives as adults to become spouses. They will need to work together as a team, helping each other out in the daily tasks and the big challenges of life. They will need to communicate often and completely to each other about what is happening in their lives. My father gave me a piece of marriage advice, and that was not to speak in anger. Because in the heat of the moment, you may say something that is difficult to erase from your spouse's mind. Let me go a little further and add, don't act in anger, because those acts are even more difficult to purge from memory than words. If possible, most arguments should be talked out before you go to bed at night. Don't watch current TV about families and couples, especially ones that have the words real in their title. The last show that I can remember would be The Waltons, for those of you that's on some of the channels late at night. I'm proud of both Hien and Grant today to celebrate their weddings before their family and friends. Hien, you've taken on a big challenge. I tried for over 20 years to get Grant to clean his room and bathroom. Hopefully you can succeed where I have failed. I'm told that you, Hien, think Grant has a great sense of humor, which I hope will carry you through some tough times. Grant, you are lucky to have found Hien. She is beautiful, smart, and talented, and your task is never to forget how lucky you are. I hope that Grant and Hien will experience all the enjoyable aspects of life together, and you would join me in congratulating the couple and wishing them the best. To Grant and Hien, hear, hear.
All right, so I have a speech, and you'll have to guess whether or not it was written by a robot. First off, I want to thank everyone for being here today. I know this isn't exactly the most convenient place to visit, but I'm happy we're all here together. If you'll indulge me for a bit, I'd like to tell you a short story. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. And in particular, it was a time when a youngish bloke was working in a tutoring center in the math department. One day, this youngish bloke invited his coworker out for a bowl of pho. Now, this is the unfortunate part of being a fan of bad jokes and general silliness. When this fellow went to the cafeteria for said pho, the coworker was missing. After about an hour or two, one just has to finish their soup and move on. Rejection is hard, but sometimes it pays to try to be understanding, and of course, it would kind of make work awkward if some misunderstanding remained. So this youngish bloke asked why the coworker didn't show up, to which she said, "Because I thought you were joking." Now, after resolving that misunderstanding, years on, the two lived together in San Francisco, and I think they're getting married. On this day, in fact. So what is the moral of the story? That there's times for silliness and seriousness? No. Everything is better with a bit of levity. Perseverance and empathy are valuable virtues? Sure, but that's hardly a new idea. No, the point is that if you stand me up, I'm not going to let it go. I look forward to spending the rest of my life with my Sheldon from another continent and eating pho and many interesting places other than the University of Houston cafeteria.